from Bet's Makes, and today we're going to be making a paper teapot. And I'm going to show you an example of what we're going to be making. This is the little purple teapot that we've been making today. Has a lid that comes up and down, a spout, a handle, a little knob at the top, and it takes several pieces in order to make this. You can make this out of 2 sheets of 12 by 12 paper. I chose plain paper for this particular one. I had already played around with various other elements on this one, so we have different colored papers on this one, so you can be really creative with them. And just before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Well, here we are in Design Space, and we're going to be making a teapot. This is probably one of the most complicated designs I have ever made, but the results are just amazing, and you can make a few of these. These are great for decoration. If you don't put the lid right on, then you can absolutely use it as a gift box. There are 3 files that you have to make sure that you upload, and I'm going to take you through this whole process. We have the teapot top F, we have the teapot handles F, and we have the teapot bottom F. So now we have 3 pieces that we're going to put into this. We are going to insert those images. Let's just move them out of the way. As you know, we always tend to get lots of black when we first do these. Now I'm going to start off with the handles. This is the spout, the handle, and the piece, the bridge that puts them in between. I'm going to change the color to yellow just so it's easier to see. Now we're going to make adjustments here first, and then we'll go on to the other one. So let's ungroup this. I'm going to take a look at this part of the teapot. It is set for the teapot itself, and then there's a line just above it, as you can see right here. That is a score line. So let's change that to score. Perfect. Now let's group it, and just to make sure, let's come down and attach it so we don't lose the pieces. Now we need a spout that has picture on both sides, so we're going to have to actually duplicate these because we need 2 of those. And same with our handles, we need to duplicate it because we need 2 of those. Now this is the spacer that's going to fit in the top part and the bottom part here. I'm just going to make 3 or 4 copies of these. I won't use them all, but at least I'll have them put aside. So that is all there is for the handles. Now let's come down here and take a look at the bottom of the teapot. Once again, I want to change that color to something where I can see it, and it doesn't matter because it's all going to be the same color anyway. Now let's ungroup this, and I want to take a look at just this piece. Now this is part that's going to sit on top, and if I move these pieces out, you'll see that they move away from it, so we know we have it ungrouped. So I'm just going to hit Control Z and push it back in place. Once again, I'm going to click on those pieces. Those are our score lines. Let's come up here, change the cut to score. Perfect. Now we've got the cuts and the scores. Now I am going to group it, and I am going to attach it. Now you'll notice that these are going to sit on top of these, but there's only 2 of them. But I need 2, 4, 6, 8. So I'm going to have to duplicate these so I have enough pieces. So 2, 4, 6, and 8. And that's all I need to do for that part. And we'll just move them up out of the way. Now let's take a look at the main piece here. Now I only want the outside as the cut. I don't want to cut anything else. So first of all, I've selected the hexagon in the middle. I'm going to change that from a cut to a score. Perfect. Now all these inner lines, except a couple of them, will be cut lines. So let's take a look at what those might be. So if I take a look at this one, let's see if I can click on one of these. So I've cut a set those I want to be score lines. These are the lines that come up the sides. Those are score lines. So let's just click on score. Want to make sure it all worked out. That's exactly what I want to see. I'm going to do the same thing for each one of them as I move around. If you can't get them, make sure you ungroup the original part. So once again, the score line. Okay, I'm going to select all of these and then we're going to move on to the top. Okay, I set all of these to score lines, but I found that there was a problem with one of these. Now we want to make sure that those are the inner lines that we are going to choose in order to have them score and not the outer lines. So I'm going to take a look at the side here. It shows us we've selected the cut, but we don't want that one. We want those inner lines. So make sure you deselect that, hold down your shift key and select the other cut lines that it shows. And I'm going to set them to score just to see if those are the correct lines. Now I'm going to click away. It looks perfect now. So that is all we need to do for this one. Make sure you select it all, the whole thing. You want to group it because you want to move it together and then you want to attach it. Now that's the bottom of your teapot. Last piece we want to look at are these pieces, and once again I'm going to select a color where you can actually see what you're doing. Now this is an interesting one because this is the top part. We're going to need two of those, and this is the little spout, not the spout but the knob at the top. So I need to ungroup these so that I can start working with them. Now once again, this particular item, oh, it looks like we've grouped it again, so let's ungroup. Take a look at this one. Continues to want to group, so I have to ungroup it one more time. Must be a lot of grouping going on. There we go. I had to ungroup it a few times. Now here is the outside cut. That is the outside cut piece, and if I take that away and don't look at it, you'll see that there's also a cut for the one above, which is this, and those need to be cut lines. And I'm going to hide both of those. Now these are the lines that need to be score lines. Now we have to make sure that we select them individually. So if I click on one, I can see where they are, and I can just move up to the top so I can make sure I can see them all. There we go. And I'm going to use the shift key to select them one at a time. Couple more to go. Well, obviously not that one. Just select them again. That looks pretty good. I'm going to change that to score. Wonderful. Now I want to turn back on the other items that we turned off. I think they're going to be down here somewhere. So I'm going to make sure that is visible. I'm going to make sure that is visible. And that looks really good. Score lines are where they should be. I'm going to group it and I am going to attach it. So that's all you need to do for that, except you need to duplicate it because you need two pieces. There are 8 edges and here there's only 4. And that's because we couldn't cut them out that way with getting the tabs at the same time. So we'll put that one aside. Next, we're going to look at this little guy. And if I turn him off, you'll see there are a bunch of lines in behind. Now those are really important lines. Now if I select the lines, I wonder if it'll let me. No, we need to, I just got a cut on them all. Let's just see what happens if I set these to score. That looks pretty darn good. Now what if I turned on the other piece, and then I'm going to arrange and put that to the back so I can see my other lines. Now that looks really good. I just want to make sure that the line I had selected here, those are all score lines. I don't see any cut. Looks really good. Now on the top piece, we're going to have this cut out, which is really nice. There are a couple of other cut lines that you need to have in there. And then of course, you have another little line that needs to be cut in there. Okay, we're looking good. So let's just highlight this, let's group it together, and let's attach it. Now it's fairly complex when you're adding the score lines, but basically, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the whole picture. Too small. Now these are all the pieces you're going to need. So you need 4 of these, 1 of these, 2 handles, 2 spouts, 4 dividers. You need 2 tops and 1 knob. And that is it. Now, when you're going to go next is we're going to save this. We're going to call it Teapot. And we'll simply save it. And now it's time to make it. Now what I'm suggesting you do is make it with something, you only need one-sided paper for this one. So you can have a really fancy rose design for the entire teapot. You can decide, depending on the cut, if you want to change the pattern from one section to another. Now this is the bottom, and that's part of the bottom. That's the handle, and those are the dividers, so that doesn't really make any difference. The second one, you have the knob, so you might decide you want to move the knob down here and make it an entirely different color. The rest should remain pretty well the same. As you can see, this one didn't fit on the other sheet, and you have your 2 spouts together, and of course these are the 2 top pieces. So there's only 2 sheets of paper for this particular project, but putting it together is going to be a little more complex. So let's just click on continue. For me, I'm using a maker, but an Explorer Air 2 works just as well for this. And you can decide what kind of paper you're going to use. For me, I tend to use medium cardstock for most everything. It's going to ask for your scoring wheel and then your knife or your fine point blade, and that's it. So let's get cutting, and when we come back, we'll go through the demo. Wow, here we are with the most difficult project I've ever put together. This is the little teapot that I have made with my own plan and design. This is out of really thin paper, so it's easy to push together. Nice little knob, nice little top, bottom, spout. This is a cute little project. And now we've cut it out into a medium cardstock, and we're going to see how we can make out with this. Now it's cut out on 2 pieces of paper, easy enough, but you have to be careful when you're taking the negative parts off. Just want to make sure we have everything in place. Now I have added a few extra things here. I added 2 of these, but I made 2 tops just in case I messed one up. And then on the other side, of course, we have all the other pieces that we're going to be working with. Pretty confident with my mats here that I can take those off without an issue. So we have our spouts, our handles, our outside pieces, and we're pretty well ready to go with this particular project. I'll be right back when I take these off the mats. So here we are with all of our pieces. Now there are a number of score lines, so you want to make sure you fold up on all the score lines, including those on the inside, just like this. I've done mine ahead of time, except for this particular one, because the only thing you need to do now is start gluing pieces together, and this is where it becomes a little challenging at times to get them all glued together. So this is the very bottom piece. We also have a number of these pieces which are going to come in as another layer towards the top. Each one of these needs to be folded, and there are a number of score lines here, so you just have to be very careful. Make sure you fold everything in. As I say, I did most of them ahead of time except these couple, and then we have the knob here, which we'll take care of a little later. But what we're concerned about now is putting all of these pieces together. Now this bottom piece is this piece here, and it comes up to this edge. The next piece that you see, so this is the bottom piece, that's this one. The next piece that comes in is going to be these pieces, which will glue up into this area. And then finally we have the top and the knob, and then this piece to put together. So it's going to take a little while to glue it all together, but I'm going to show you what you're going to start with. So each of these parts, you're going to start by gluing here, and you'll glue all the way around before we get to the top part. So you want to make sure that you have all of your items creased. I had one of mine cut incorrectly, so I don't have a glue spot here, but I'm going to glue all of these tabs together. So that's the very first thing you want to do. Make sure you try and get them right on the fold, just like that. And then we're going to glue those together. And I will go through and glue all of the bottom pieces. So that's your next step, is glue the bottom pieces, and I'll be right back. So here we have all of these bottom pieces together. If you look on the inside, you'll see the little edges are in the inside. I had to make a little shunt right here because the piece was missing, and instead of recutting it, I just added a little piece of paper. Now the next thing we want to do is glue these pieces together. So now we're getting a fold more towards the inside. So we'll start by just gluing this first one. Maybe too much. Got a little bit too much there, but that's okay. I'll put it onto the inside. We're going to glue those together, but you'll notice you're going to get an overlap at the top, which is just fine. We're not going to glue these top pieces yet. We're simply going to glue these edges together. There's the first one. And then we'll continue all the way around. So now you have the bottom of your teapot. I'm just going to hold this in place because you want them to be fairly straight. So we'll glue each one of these in place all the way around, and then we'll have the top part of our bottom all completed, and then we're going to work on the top edge of it. Alright, the bottom part of our teapot is pretty well ready, and now we have the next part, which are these items that have to be glued on. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold up the bottoms just like this, and fold them in half, and make sure that we have all of our flaps have the score lines put in, because we're going to need those momentarily. And what we're going to do is we're going to glue along here, and we are going to glue them to the edges right here. So we're going to put these two in place, and then we'll move on to the next one, because once these ones are in place, I'll just show you what will happen. We are then going to fold it in and then glue the rest of it together. So we have to make sure all of our folds are nice and crisp. That's going to be an essential part before we glue the rest of it together. Now gluing these pieces is a little more difficult than what you've been able to do before, because you can see it makes this particular pattern. So when you add these ones in, it's going to actually bend towards the teapot this way, and then we're going to glue those flaps together after we glue these pieces on top of these. And you have to take a little care with this particular one, because you want to make sure that you keep it in the same shape and you don't overlap. So we're going to start with a couple of them here, and then we'll glue everything together after that point. So I'm just going to add my glue across the top just for a couple of them so you can see what we're doing here. My glue is getting a little thick. So what I want to do is make sure that I match this edge, and this is going to fold over, and I want to make sure that I'm going to match to the next edge. And I'm just going to hold those in place. Make sure it dries. Then I'm going to fold it in like this. So I'll quite dry yet, but what it will do, it will fold in this way, and that's exactly what we want. So let me just hold these and make sure they're dry in place. And then I will glue them all the way around, and then we'll go to the next step. As I said before, we're going to be gluing these in. So what I'm going to do is you're going to fold them in and then match them like this. And if you do it this way, everything will match up perfectly, and then when it's time to glue, you can bring these up. So make sure you glue the flaps together, that they match end for end. So I've got two in place there. I'm going to fold the next two down, and I'll take the next two. Make sure I fold it nicely. Then I'm going to apply the glue here, and then we're going to glue these end to end as well. And this is where I get a little mucky, but that's fine. So then we'll glue these two together. And then we'll go through all the way around so we have all of those glued in place, and we'll be right back. Well, if you're like me right now, you're getting a lot of glue on your hands. But what I've done is I've glued those all together. Now you have to make sure your tabs are all facing the same way. I had to move one of them around because I had it facing the wrong way, because our job now is we're going to take these little tabs only, and we're going to glue them together this way so that now the teapot starts to fold in back on itself. So we'll just take a small amount of glue, and this time my glue is all over the place by this time. So I'm just going to take a small amount, put it on the flap. I'm going to put the flap together, and I'm going to hold it in place until it dries. Then I'm going to move to the next flap, and then the next flap, and all the way around. So then you'll have the piece of the teapot where you're pretty well ready to put the lid together. And this is really starting to take shape. It looks really cute, really good. So I'm going to glue all of these all the way around, and I will be right back. Okay, now that we have all of these pieces together, you can see how it's starting to form the teapot. Now we have to work on the lid and how that's going to fit in here. So right now I've just moved these into position. These are not glued at this point in time because we're going to glue those a little later. So I'm just going to set this aside for now. Now we're going to work on the two pieces from the top. Now there were two pieces like this. We are going to glue those together. But before we do that, we have to make sure they're aligned properly. And in order to do that, you want to have these flaps come over on each one of these items, just to make sure that they are locked in sync. And those look pretty locked together. Now what we want to do is glue those two pieces together. Now I'm simply going to do that by just lifting up one little corner here, adding a little glue, put everything back into place, make sure it's lined up, to make sure everybody is in place. I want to make sure it's perfectly straight. Move this over just a little hair, and there we go. It's pretty well glued into place. See that the glue is sticking there nicely. Now I'm going to lift this edge a little bit, and I'm going to apply a little more glue to this side just to make sure everything stays in place. I don't have to add a lot. Once again, you want to make sure everything is perfectly lined up, and I have a glue where I can just move it into position. It goes here. It looks pretty straight to me. Absolutely perfect. Now the hard part here is we're going to be putting the lid into here, or the little knob that fits into this hole. But in the meantime, we have to glue these edges together. So that's the next step, is to glue all of these pieces together, but just on the edges. And once we've glued those in place, what we're going to do is we're going to start working on the knob itself, and this is a lot of fun putting this one together. So we'll be right back. Okay, all of the little pieces here are glued together. So we have a nice little crown here. We can then move these pieces in, just give them a little fold. We're not going to do much with it yet. I just want to fold those in. So we're getting ready to set this in place. Just give it a fold. Now what's going to happen now is when we're building our knob, the piece is going to come through here and we'll have some small parts, and that will be these little pieces at the end, where we are going to glue those into the center. But first, we need to put these pieces together. So in order to do that, if you can see your little fold marks here, what's going to happen is we're going to start gluing these pieces together this way. So this one would go here, fold that one a little bit, this one will go here. As you can see, it's starting to make a knob. So once we get those pieces all glued together, then we're going to glue the knob in place to the top, and then we're going to put the two pieces together, and then finally add our spout and our handle. So right now all we're going to do is fold these pieces in place, and then once again we're going to take our glue and glue those pieces together, and we'll be right back once we have those all glued in place. So now we have our knob all ready. I've got all those pieces glued together. What we're going to do is with these parts, we're going to spread them out, but right now we have to push them in because our goal is to get them through the hole at the top here. Just push those all in, and it should match as far as we know. Now these are all going to come through here. I'm going to apply some glue around here, and we're going to glue those tabs down, and that will give us the top of our teapot. So we'll just grab some of my glue here. It's getting a little thick. It's a little more than what I had needed, but that's okay because all we're going to do now is just glue these ends right down onto that paper. Fold those over, make sure they're right against the paper, and I'm just going to hold it in place until it dries. And once that dries, we're going to start to put this piece on top, and then we're going to add our spout. Okay, we have the lid already. We have the teapot. We'll put the lid on in just a moment, but we also want to add the spout and the handle. So this is the way we're going to do the spout. Make sure you match these pieces together, facing in the same direction. You're going to fold in these small pieces. You are going to glue those together. So that's the first thing. You want to glue those two pieces together. Just hold them in place for a second or two. Make sure they're dry enough. Now, when you put the spout out, you're going to need a piece of paper or a spacer in between. So I took one of the squares and I folded it in half into the center. And what we're going to do is we're going to glue these outside edges into the spout. So that gives it a nice little spacer. So the spacer is going to go this way. Slide it just down. And that's just so the spout doesn't fall apart. I might just turn it around because it's going to show otherwise. I'm just going to turn it around this way so you can see the little piece inside here. That looks about right. And now all we have to do is glue the spout onto the teapot. I'm just going to pick a spot that will look pretty good, the center of one of the areas. Just let it dry there for a little bit. So now we have our spout. And then we're going to do the handle. Now for the handle, what we're going to do is put these two together, and then we're going to fold these flaps out. These will get glued to the edge of the teapot, but I want you to glue this two pieces together first. So let's start with that. Glue. Glue these two pieces together. I've ended up with more glue on my hands. So those match pretty well. And then we're going to glue these two pieces to the teapot. Now I want to go opposite the spout, so I'll look to see where the spout is and then just put it opposite. And get it straight. Perfect. So now we'll just let those dry. We have a handle, we have a spout, and now you just have to place the top on. Now, what I try to do with the top on my other one is I took one of the pieces so I could open up the teapot. So I didn't need to glue these into place. I simply would just glue this back piece right here with one back piece, and that way I can move the teapot lid up and down, and I think that's the perfect solution for what we're going to be doing. I'm doing one final little thing here with the teapot. We're going to glue these two back pieces together, and once those dry you'll be able to shut the lid of the teapot, and we'll just make sure that it stays in that place like that. So now we are finished with our teapot. And look, this is so gorgeous. I just have to make sure this dries in the right place, and we are good to go. Now you can put some treats in here and then shut the lid, put them on your shelf. You can decorate the sides of this teapot to make it really gorgeous. So let's make sure that you get a couple of these on the shelf, just like we do here. We have this one that I made earlier, and this one that we just made today. So this is a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed. Well, I hope you really had fun making this teapot. It's a little complex and complicated, and sometimes the glue gets stuck to your hands. I end up with more glue on my hands than I do on the project quite often. So this teapot, this one, we've decided to allow the top to open so you can put some treats inside. So I really hope you enjoy that, and just before we go, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel.